Hi everyone. Thanks for everyone who's just joined. We're just going to wait a couple of seconds for the rest of the attendees to join. But whilst you folks are waiting, we would love for you to complete our first poll, our first question, which is, what is your favourite thing about Pride? And whilst you're writing that down, I'd love to open this up to the panel to what your favourite thing about Pride is to you.
I would say outfits. I mean, anybody that has been at the Pride Parade has seen the amazing outfits. As far as I'm aware, this year's Pride, many people did an offshoot where they didn't go to the parade due to the corporate huge overtake of the Pride Parade, and instead went to other places to have like picnics and other events. But that didn't stop people from being absolutely fabulous.
100%, definitely agree with you there. It's the one time of the year where you got to dress up as much as you can.
I think that should be normalized. You know, dressing as you want, express yourself in all the ways you feel you should do, and people should not judge you by that.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can wear really short shorts to the Pride, but wearing that every day, I mean, London Underground, that's just nasty. It's so dirty there.
That's a point.
Victor, what's your favorite thing about Pride? I
think it's the opportunity, right, to as well to express yourself, not only with the outfits, but as well being outspoken about it. You know, I like to bore people about how I'm proud all the year, all the months of the year. But I think that feeling that around queer people gathering around, celebrating, being ourselves, and just telling the world that we are here, we are not going anywhere, and we are, yes, celebrating because it needed. I think that's my favorite thing about Pride.
Amazing, I love that. It's definitely, I agree with that as well. Just being part of the community all together on that one day is great. Emre, anything you are a big fan of when it comes to Pride Month or a specific day?
What I really like about Pride is that we all come together during Pride and we celebrate our differences and similarities as a group. I do have the feeling that there is no real you and me based on someone's socially constructed identity. It's recognizing our humanity. And that's what Pride means to me, and what I really love about Pride, because it's about belonging.
I love that. Yeah, that's definitely something. Again, I would agree with as well. I feel like I'm going to be saying that a lot this meeting, but thank you so much. I think we're going to get started. I'm sure people will come start trickling in as we go. But good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to our annual Pride webinar panel discussion, and thank you so much for all being here. Today we'll be talking about Pride in Tech, the future of employee activism. You can expect about an hour of a panel discussion chaired by myself with a live Q&A throughout, and half an hour of networking for those that wish to continue the conversation further. Please ask as many questions as you want, or about anything you like. We are here to answer and just have a good conversation, really. To introduce myself a little bit, my name is Natasha Mallison. My pronouns are she, they, and I am a DevOps recruitment specialist in the German market. I'm also a German ambassador for Women in DevOps and the LGBTQ plus pillar lead of our employee engagement group here at Genovo, which is a bit of a mouthful, but I am all of those things. I'm incredibly passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ensuring that our community feels supported and able to be their authentic selves, both within and outside of the workplace. I'm really particularly excited to be part of today's conversation, as it touches on many topics that I think are particularly prevalent and important this year. So including gender diversity and the conversations around this, rainbow washing and its impact, the Netflix walkout, and the change in corporate activism in this recent year. So thank you all so much for joining. I hope people find value in this discussion, and every question again is welcomed. So this year we have witnessed some progressive changes taking place in the LGBT community. In the UK, conversion therapy was banned for certain members of the community, and in the US, Biden signed an executive order advancing equality for LGBTQ individuals, including addressing discriminatory legislative attacks against LGBT children and families, preventing conversion therapy, especially when it comes to children, and safeguarding healthcare and programs designed to prevent youth suicide. This is so important when we look at the rise of LGBTQ plus hate and attacks both legally and physically this year on a global scale. So this isn't just in the US, but looking at the US to start with, almost 300 anti-LGBTQ bills have been filed this year alone, and mostly this has been attacking transgender youth and children. Comparing this to 2018, where only 41 were filed throughout the whole 12 months, it is painting a less than ideal picture of progress for our community. One particularly prominent instance of this occurred just this month, actually during Pride in Texas, where lawmakers have filed a motion to ban drag queens being around children after a gay bar held a daytime family drag brunch to raise money for LGBTQ youth. The state representative of Texas, Brian Slayton, declared his intention to introduce this legislation to ban minors on Twitter, which we do seem to be happening more and more when it comes to US politics, unfortunately stating that drag queens are perverted adults obsessed with sexualizing young children. On top of this, lawmakers have declared gender-affirming healthcare for minors as a form of child abuse, and trans children have been banned from playing in sports teams that align with their gender identity. This is something that we can also see when looking both globally and back to the UK, where I'm based. So conversion therapy has been banned for LGBT folks, but not for transgender people in the UK, which really alludes to the general transphobia that's going on in our country at the moment. Another example of this, and this is from 2021, but 1 in 3 employers have admitted to the fact that they wouldn't employ a trans person, which is quite scary and definitely something to speak about, considering our conversations today. Outside of the legal aspect, looking more in terms of the actual physical aspects, we've seen homophobic and transphobic attacks increase globally. So last year was actually the most violent for trans people on record, and that was a year where we were in lockdown, so that's quite worrying. In Ireland, in the last couple of months, we've seen a homophobic mass murderer, we've seen the assaults of lesbian couples, non-binary folk, and a lot more. And I couldn't really speak today without mentioning what's been on everyone's minds, everyone's LinkedIn and everyone's social media, which is Roe v. Wade being overturned. This has an impact on people from every background, regardless of a sexual attraction and gender identity. Non-binary, trans men and several lesbian couples will be and are impacted by this and are often forgotten in the conversation when we speak about the rights to an abortion and the rights to health in this perspective. I think we should also remember, as kind of marginalized groups, that the people that are more likely to be impacted by this are the socioeconomically disadvantaged people and also people of color. So it's really time for us, and it's important for us to band together to support to end discrimination against every marginalized group, no matter what group we come for. Unfortunately, as well, with Roe v. Wade conversation, it's also led to calls for Obergefell v. Hodges to be overturned, meaning we could see a future, unfortunately, where same-sex marriage in the US is no longer a fundamental right for queer couples. So not the nicest of stats, but unfortunately it's been a bit of a crazy year. But with this in mind, we're going to look a little bit more to the workplace. So of the 24 best companies for LGBTQ people to work, 50% of these companies were tech organizations. So for this Pride discussion, we're going to tackle the spectrum of LGBTQ identities, why tech is becoming a safe space for queer folk, and the future of employee activism in this arena. Basically, what we're trying to do is amplifying the voices of LGBTQ plus leaders within technology and celebrating our uniqueness. So just a bit of housekeeping. I want to make sure that this is as engaging as possible. So if you do have any questions throughout, please let us know in the Q&A function or the chat box to the right of your screen. Lastly, before we kick things off, please note that this is being recorded and will be uploaded to our Soda Social YouTube channel, where you can also access our previous webinars and also our Soda Social Spotify channel as a podcast. Now, first things first, if all things goes well, there should be a poll that you can answer. And the question here is, do you think that your organization has the processes and initiatives in place to support underrepresented groups within technology? And we'll give you a couple of minutes to answer. So yeah, so there we answer. That's very split. We've got pretty much the same on every single one, which is interesting to see. It's good to see that for some companies there's definitely the initiatives in place to support. Unfortunately, we would like to see that at 100%. But yeah, I guess for those who aren't sure, it's a good time to have these conversations about what companies should be doing in order to know whether they are actually kind of following those and doing those things that we would like to see to support members of the community. I'm now going to move over to our panel. I feel like I've talked enough. So what I'm going to ask for everyone is to introduce themselves, your role, what you do, your pronouns, and what Pride means to you. I'm going to start with Emre from Google.
First of all, thank you so much, Natasha, for bringing also for also highlighting the super important topic of homophobia, transphobia, because that's also a lot of the work that I do, is focusing on the hate that we are witnessing, just being us. So my name is Emre Çelik. My pronouns are he, they. I work at Google as employee relation and investigation partner, and right next to my job, I'm also an LGBTIQ activist. So I do a lot of educational work in Germany. I support and fund different NGO projects in terms of diversity. And as mentioned before, Pride is all about belonging. It's recognizing our humanity without saying it's they and us, and it's all us. And every fight from the woman movement, from the Black woman movement, is also a fight from us, because there will be always a Black person who is gay or an LGBTIQ. There will be always a woman who identifies as lesbian. So everything what we basically want to do during Pride is created a sense of belonging, because we all have a right to belong. We all have a right to be human, and that's why I'm what Pride means for me. It means creating belonging.
Who's next?
All right, I can go next to fill the chasm of silence. Hi, I'm Alex. I work for Duffel, and I work in London, and I've lived in London for soon to be 5 years. Yeah. And throughout that time, I've seen, well, more than one Pride parade. However, sadly, I come from a small country in Northern Europe where Pride, well, only got started quite a bit later than in Western world. So as a result, I'm a, you could say, late bloomer. But throughout that time, I've realized that Pride is, as I mentioned before, the shiny outfits, but as others mentioned as well, the community, the being yourself, the showing to the world that you're here and you're not going to go away. But also, it is very reflective of, well, the society in general. Whenever there's another, as mentioned, Roe v. Wade, or overturning the right to for a gay marriage, etc., during that time, the Pride is always more active. There's always more people speaking up and always more people protesting and shouting. And well, that's how we get stuff done, not by twiddling our thumbs and saying that, oh, so bad, but by raising our voices and coming together. That's what Pride is for me.
And I guess I go. So my name is Victor Moreno. My pronouns are he, him in this side, sorry. I'm the head of engineering of Her App, and I consider myself an activist. I do not do as much activism as I would like because COVID and London is like such a great place to do, trying to get more and doing it where I can, whenever I can. What Pride means for me, as I said, is the sense of belonging, the community, the opportunities to show and stand. And I am very, very outspoken and combative person. I think as well that Pride is just a bit of like standoff against all these people that they do not like us, that they want to suppress us, and especially in these times, now they cannot do it to cis gay people because they get into positions of more outspoken, more privilege, more power, more money. So they are taking it with those more unprivileged, more discriminated, the trans, and I think is awful. So that's why this Pride Month is especially important about it, because we should always remember that we have pride because trans people fight for it. They started it. They were the seed of pride, and we should defend it, and we should be outspoken, and we should be, as Enra mentioned, like being a front, being all united. So I think Pride is especially active month for everyone that really wants to push equality, that really wants to push for all the rights, and it should be inclusive, should be as inclusive as possible, because you never know when you are forging an ally. So I think that's everything about Pride for me.
That is amazing, all of you. I completely agreed with everything you said, and especially that Pride is a celebration, but remembering our history. Why does Pride exist, and who are the people that allowed us to be who we are today, and who are the people that threw those first stones at Stonewall and all of that. So that's amazing. Thanks for introducing yourselves. I'm going to move on to the next question, and I think I'll pick on Emery first again. What do you think that tech companies can be doing to support Pride and Pride initiatives?
It's one of my favorite questions. So like, what always these big tech companies, and let me phrase it, let's get into it, and I'll try to answer this question a bit holistic. So a lot of the work I do is around authentic self. So we often see each other we don't see each other for each other. We often see each other for who someone should be. So instead of accepting myself when I'm wearing nail polish, people immediately start making assumptions about myself, about everything about me, they started putting me into boxes, into roles. And because I don't fit in one of those cisgender, heteronormative, patriarchal structures, I've been questioned my entire life. My sexuality has been questioned, my gender, my professionality. And it goes even that far that people start to question my humanity. because I don't fit in someone else's fiction. And what I tell people is, and people in companies especially, is that you don't have to pretend to be someone. You don't have to be in a role. Just try to be you every day, every second, at home and also at work. So why don't we change the narrative and say, hey, the only role you should play at work is the role that you define for yourself. So I'm asking every one of you, also the participants, are you your authentic self at any time, or do you pretend the role at work? And any organization that does not let people be their authentic self is promoting homophobia and transphobia. Because the only thing that we are fighting for is that we would like to be free. And that's always, I always advocate that Pride must create a safe space, Pride must create belonging, because when my humanity is being recognized, we start to look each other horizontally, not each other on pedestals. So when we talk now about belonging and humanity, so I'm excluding now the word pride, so how can companies really create belonging and putting the human being in the center of everything, what they do, I would like to phrase the question a bit differently. So not how tech companies can support pride, but how tech companies can help us to become free. How tech companies can help us to stop the violence that we are witnessing every day, where people, just because they are like us, because just they're human, are being killed, hunted, tortured, are being shot because they're celebrating a day of freedom just because of based on their humanity. So the question I'm asking back to everyone and to all companies in this world is, how can you help us to get free?
That was pretty powerful. I'm not sure if anyone can follow that one up.
Putting the bar high, right? But I think it's a very good point, right? So supporting pride, I think, is very important. But the question of humanity is at the core of it, right? Historically, every kind of discrimination, it was considered other people subhuman. So it's actually a trait in humanity that we are very quick to label, and we are very quick to label the different things and just put them away and remove them. So what they can do, that question is really powerful. I do not have an answer, to be honest, but I think that the only way, or my take on it, is like the only way to recognize humanity, recognize everyone as they came, as they are living their own lives as they wish to, is to be as human as possible. So companies, they are not humans. Companies are entities. It's a construct, like everything, right? But I think there is very much actions that they can do to recognize, starting with like not promoting certain things, like do not brushing away microaggressions, to be actually outspoken, not only in June, basically supporting, giving the support to pride, but equality fights. I think it's the constant balancing of like where the need for a company of making a profit will have to outbalance the need for people to be recognized, right? And that's the question. The companies, they are entities for profit most of the time, and I think that they do not support the pride because they have the fear of people rejecting their products. And I said, like, that's great. Then just reject the product, reject the company, but we should not withstand, they should not roll over and give complacency to the opposition, because when you are complacent, you are not fighting, you are not in the right, and by doing so you are dehumanizing people, and that's the worst thing. And doesn't matter if it's a gay, lesbian, trans, non-binary, Black, Asian, doesn't matter. I mean, the humanization happens in so many levels, and then it happens is especially bad where we are talking about companies at the moment on tech, where usually workers within the specific conditions people, they are not as privileged as in outside of some companies. So that is a lot of social pressure, a lot of things. So I think at the end of the day, companies should become more human. And that the only way to do that is by being humans all around and architect everything of the company is doing from the human perspective for the human people in general. It's a very loaded question. I love it. I can philosophize around it, but yeah, I think it's that.
That's really interesting. I guess if you're in a company like that and you're trying to kind of appeal to their humanity or kind of create less of an entity, how would you suggest you would go about that if you're an employee in a company, for example, and you felt that potentially they weren't doing things in quite the way that you would like them to?
So you want to take it? Yep. Please.
Please.
So I think like when you are faced right with the crossroad of deciding like excuse me, to do what you think is right and aligns with your values and your beliefs and resonate with the core of you as a human and as a person versus the need of have to work in a company and the needs, the very material needs everyone has. It's a matter of like, you know, you need to find the support. And that's why community is so important. I mean, I'm a very passionate about a lot of things, but I think like, you know, collective action is usually the best option. So the thing is like, the only way to change a practice is by putting pressure where it needs to be done. I think that the only way to do is like have that community there behind you, internally and externally, and organize and fight back. I mean, as I said, complacency, virtue signaling is increasingly common, and people love to make a post and they love to say how inclusive, how open they are, but they do not walk the talk, you know. And I think that's very important. That's the activism, right? We are tying all together to the activism, but there is no activism without collectivism. And I think that's personally, that's the only way. I've been in situations personally where I just stand around with very little people around things, and one of those persons is in this call, and well, we didn't end well. So I know exactly how important it is being able to defend this and have the support of other people.
100%. You definitely really touched on a couple of questions that I had for later on there. Just to move back to Alex, do you have any thoughts on how tech companies or companies in general could support Pride and what you as an employee could do if you're in one of those organizations?
Well, as Victor mentioned, companies don't care. They're not people. So what matters is the people in the company. That is from, you know, the junior level employee all the way to the C-level executive. Not everybody cares. Many people have their own problems, especially with the current cost of living crisis and the energy prices crisis. Some people just don't have the energy and time to worry about anything besides their next meal and how they're going to heat their home. But from the company level, there are, as Victor mentioned, focusing 1 month a year is just virtue signaling. When it comes to the people in the company, focusing on pride, focusing on inclusivity all year round, that's what starts making a change. So for specific examples, you've got things like charities. I've worked at a company before where employees could donate part of their salary to charities and the company would match that amount, as well as people could take paid time that's not included in their yearly paid vacation time, but literally paid time off to go and volunteer. In addition to, well, being really open and inclusive in their own internal company policies. So things like making sure that when you're interviewing people, you have multiple people doing the interviews. When you are onboarding people, when you are having them in the teams, so on and so forth. You make sure you use the pronouns. You make sure that nobody gets excluded purely based on, you know, the race, gender, sexuality, even disability. That is a whole bigger other topic as well. And yeah, it's a big thing also when companies put their logos in rainbow for June, everywhere except for a couple of countries, you know, where the profits will plummet just because they have a rainbow logo. It shows very much of what a company is actually about. So for the people in the company and the company itself to show that it cares, it should care all year round. You know, as mentioned, charities, supporting other enterprises that are queer friendly or that are explicitly for people of LGBTQ plus. Things like for disadvantaged LGBTQ youth, there's a housing association in UK where you can donate your time or money or just be a sponsor. So there's many ways, as many ways as there are stars in the sky. Well, almost. And it all comes down to how much is the company and the people in it willing to invest. Getting started is hard, keeping it going is hard, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Natasha, I just want to make a comment to the silence piece. I mean, I think there's also a question around silence, right? So in the Q&A, and I think Victor, you touched on about being silent. I think it's a super important topic, because so I'm currently reading a book from Audre Lorde. She was a Black lesbian mother and activist, and she wrote one of her most famous quotas, and you will find it probably on Instagram and everywhere on social media, is her way how she described the transformation of silence into language and into action. Because she basically advocated that when we speak, we are afraid of our words will not be heard or not welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it's better to speak. And she says over and over again that silence is the enemy. Because the system in that we're living, the system of oppression that basically tells you every second, even before you were born, that heterosexuality is the norm and that's how you have to live your life. Without even, they didn't even ask my approval. They just expected from me being straight, right? And expected me to be silent because I should accept that. And I definitely decided for myself, no, I'm not silent anymore, because the silent, they killed me in energetically, spiritually, and mentally. So I decided for myself that saying, well, if I'm not speaking, then things won't be better. If I speak, things just can get better, because what happens is actually that I find supporters, I find people who think like me, right? And I could highly recommend for everyone who wanted to start employee activism, or who wanted to turn silence into language, this book from Audre Lorde. And yeah, because talking is a fundamental way so you can start a change, right? So it's never too late speaking up your truth, standing for yourself and standing for others.
I think that's a really important point you've touched on there. Even us having this conversation here today with the people we're having a conversation with is already a stand in itself. And what you were saying, Alex, I think is you touched on so many important points there, but you know, the donations, the other things in terms of kind of the recruitment perspective as well, which is something as a recruiter myself, I'm really actively trying to do. It's at every level, right? There's so much we can do. So thank you all for that. I'm going to move swiftly on to our next question. Feel free, whoever wants to jump in first. But as we spoke about earlier, we do see that within tech companies, they are often more LGBTQ inclusive, or most of the companies that are more LGBTQ inclusive happen to be tech companies, whichever way you want to take it. Why do you feel that tech companies are more inclusive to LGBTQ communities than potentially other companies?
Supply and demand. Essentially, tech is a highly sought after profession. We cannot pump out enough highly skilled tech professionals as there is demand. And as our society evolves and we get more engrossed in tech all around us every day, we just don't have enough people. And as a result, the tech companies have started to try and one-up each other, so to say. Older days, it was just, oh, we have bean bags and we have, snooze ball, whatever, things like that. Nowadays, people have, as younger generations enter the workforce, they are, so to say, not bought that easily. So besides the lovely perks of like free lunch on Fridays, you get things like accepting company community, and everybody gets pronoun pins, and we always make sure that all kinds of family types are included in company outings and big company parties and so on. So as a result, companies are moving more towards making sure that people are feeling included and they are feeling good being part of the company. And that is a huge privilege that tech has, purely because, well, we all know tech people are highly paid, and that also comes from supply and demand. And when it comes to speaking up about pride, or when it comes to people trying to bring LGBTQ plus into the awareness of people in the company, well, the privilege comes back in again. As a tech person, I'm not saying you're going to find a new job in 2 weeks, but it is going to be a lot easier to find a place. So to the previous point about speaking up at the company, if you fear that speaking up might lose you your job, you can already start reaching out to the recruiters and start lining up potential options just in case. And well, I'm just a careful person. That's what I would do. Just in case, make sure there's a backup option and then make some noise. I am sure that you will find like-minded people. There was a study some years ago, I don't remember exactly how many, but essentially 40% of people in society identify with the gender they were assigned at birth and identify with being heterosexual. That means 60% is everybody else, which means that you're probably gonna find like-minded people. So just scream and shout. And if you get fired, well, first of all, wrongful termination. And second of all, you already have a backup option.
I think I agree a lot on that. I say as well, I would like to add, like, traditionally tech companies, right? The companies, they play the game of inclusivity. I know that there's companies that they believe at their core of values of it, right? But if we go a bit back in time to previously, like the early 2000s, where or even back, I think there is always like less frowned upon non-conforming presenting people. They were less frowned upon, like people like in the different gender identities and orientations, because tech is a lot of people that is not facing the wall. They are like hidden apart, to say. So companies felt like it's not a big deal. It's not gonna, a client that does not agree with being served by a trans person or a non-binary person, like for example in a dining, in the tech that does not happen. The tech professional usually is a very slim percentage of the workforce in a company that will face clients, and more companies are already moving on that and saying like, we are open, we are inclusive, we like everyone. If some engineer or some IT professional needs to be client facing, we are not going to make a fuss about it, and it's a good movement. But I think that even with this started of like having a lot of back office personnel, that they don't have any impact in the public image, it plays a big role on this as well, because when you go to public facing customer businesses, you see that it's less predominance of like diversity. And this is very easy to check like certain brands in the UK, certain companies, and you will see what I'm talking about. So I think it benefits for this thing that it was not a good thing, because it was like, yeah, whatever, I don't care because no one is see it, but gets into the ball rolling, because that people inside the companies, they're the ones speaking out for more inclusivity, for more diversity, for more representation at the end of the day. So that I think gives a bit of way to all of this situation, or this new paradigm where we live on, where tech companies join their need for people with like not caring about who you are or how you present. They only care about like giving you the best environment for you to thrive. And there's a lot of companies, they do that, you know, or the people in companies do that, to be specific. The companies, again, as a construct. And I think that play a big factor on it.
No, I definitely think what you both have said there is some really valid points regarding the, both the supply and demand factor, and possibly the negativity of, you know, being in the back office. You can have more gender and sexually diverse people because it's not going to represent the company as out loud, I guess, which is a negative thing, but kind of culminates into a positive thing in the end. So there's kind of positives and negatives to it. Emery, is there anything you would want to add to that one, or should we move on?
Plus one, what to everything what has been said from Alex and also from Victor. Just one comment. I do believe that tech companies are also highly focusing on that their code is unbiased. So they're doing a lot of work in terms of unconscious bias, and they, in order to reduce it. And if you are creating a workplace that is not free, but aware of that unconscious bias exists, that they are considering that in product development about the own biases, then you automatically will attract also talents with different social identities. Because I think it's a cycle that automatically develops, because you automatically attract people because they know, okay, well, if you're creating inclusive products, if you are trying to mitigate bias as good as you can, then probably you will do it also with your human beings in the company, because you will treat them as they are and not for you to expect them to be, you know. So I do believe that this is also a link that we shouldn't be unseen.
No, 100%. I think that that's super important. Something that, from my perspective as a recruiter, I've definitely seen as well. So yeah, incredible points, all of you. I guess my next question would be, and no need to speak about it if you don't feel comfortable, but no, for Victor, this might be slightly less relevant for you, as you are in a very queer company as it is. But how have people found kind of coming out in the workplace, or even being out in the workplace throughout their career? Is there any kind of specific situations that you'd want to kind of bring to light?
As I've already said, I'm a cautious person, and Alex is not my birth name. And I was at a company, and I was trying to basically, at the time, I hadn't updated my LinkedIn yet. I went through the whole interview process, got hired and so on. And I decided I wanted to change my name to be recognized by my chosen name. And it was essentially an uphill battle. And some people, they accepted. Some people, they, picked up on it. They honored my request to be, well, recognized as who I am. But others did not. And later on, when I left the company, I updated my LinkedIn, I updated my own personal email, everything, my own personal website, so on and so forth, so that the next company, they didn't even know that I had at one point some other name, only for the legal and finance, for the signatures, which is kind of sucky, but oh well, it happens. And it also depends on the company, because I've been at companies before where they don't care what your pronouns are, they just call you as they see you. But there are other companies which they will honor your pronouns, be they, you know, in your Slack name, Zoom name, Slack profile, pin, wherever they are, they will honor it. So I guess it really depends on the company. And that's why I mentioned before as well, have an escape plan. And if you're in tech, your escape plan can be a bit easier than in other industries. But if a company doesn't respect who you are, who you feel like inside, even if your outside doesn't match, that's not a company worth being in. You know, save your own sanity, save your own well-being, and move on.
Yeah, +1.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, I'm very lucky of working in a company that we are gay as fuck, and excuse my French. We are, and we are very proud about it. Long time ago in Spain, I was not that fortunate when I was working in a Catholic university that they founded my studies very, very kindly in exchange of labor, right? And when I was 21 years old, maybe, so it was a long time ago. It was not that well. I mean, they could not sack me because technically I was like an intern with a full scholarship. So it looks very bad, but I have to support like really, really extenuating comments from certain people, like head of sales, that it was like an extremely conservative person. I mean, everything you can think about a Catholic conservative, it was there. And the comments, they were like, you know, really painful to stand. And at the beginning, I was silent because, you know, I didn't want to lose my scholarship. But it was a point where someone in the university saw me with one of my ex-boyfriends around the city, and they start to pick on that in the comments. And I basically just decided like, fuck this, this is not worth. I mean, I'm not gonna stand for this. This is illegal, plainly illegal, but it's also dehumanizing, is incredibly painful, and they are picking someone that is not even here to defend themselves. So I decided to speak up. By speaking up, I was reprimanded, and I was like threatened. I was a lot of things until I remember my mom, you know, is a bit of a lawyer. So I go back home and I do what Alex always said, like take the legal route and come back and make things right. I mean, it was an arduous conversations over a couple of weeks where a lot was said and a lot was, you know, threat. But after that, obviously, I had like another year of working there, and I always have to withstand the looks, the gossip, that they were making up. That I was like, to be honest, some of the gossip they were making up, they are not even as wild as the things I was doing as a 21 years old bisexual man in Spain. But, you know, it's painful. It's really, really painful. And I withstand it because at the end of the day, the direct confrontation was the worst part for me, because obviously I'm very outspoken and I've always been really direct. So my first instinct is to fight. But I put forward because, I mean, this opportunity I had for my scholarship, it was actually what lifted me a lot in my life. But it was like painful. After that, I moved away from Spain. And to be honest, I never had a problem, except in England, people having suffering the double whammy of being like non-straight and saying like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have dinner with my husband tonight, and someone saying to me, oh, you mean your wife? And I was like, no, I mean my husband. Thank you very much. Thank you, wife. Like double points for you. You are not only homophobic, but also you are racist for you know, assuming that I don't know how to speak this language. That I kind of butcher it all the time. But it's a mixed bag, you know, even with all the acceptance in countries as advanced as England and as advanced socially as Spain, you face these things. So, and it's painful. It's painful, and you just leave these scars, right? I have to live with them. But my goal is like preventing anyone to have these scars, like, by being really outspoken and using the position of privilege I have to fight these things to that nail.
Yeah, so I at Google, I don't have that at all. So we all have pronouns in our signature. We have it in our intranet. I mean, it's pride, and everyone is, I just gave the whole team like pride lashes, and everyone is leashes, and everyone is running around with it. And I couldn't even stop giving it because they wanted to give to the children and the children's children. So I don't know. So people are super into it. So I didn't have any experience of being out, because outing is just something that outing for what? For my humanity, you know, this is the narrative is here differently. I know it's a bubble, because I know when I leave the door here that being gay is I'm being attacked, and people throw trash on me sometimes, depending on what I wear. So that's what reality is. And I just want to make it here clear, if you have the feeling that your humanity is not being recognized, then this is something that you really should think about. And I would like to praise Alex, because saying, hey, you are not worth, you are way much worth than this attacks that you are witnessing every day, and you are not the problem. It's actually the system of oppression that just told each individual that the only right way to live is that if you apply someone else's fiction and make it to your own reality. Right? And this is not the fact, because the system is the threat, not me not minding my business and wearing nail polish or just having rainbow cape on and so on. So I just want to make it clear that just be true to yourself, right? And if you ever have that experience, just try to get mercy for those individuals who are bringing you in this very uncomfortable situation, because they never learned how to express their own femininity. They never learned how they explore their own binarity, right? Because as we know, it's all fluent, and they somehow oppressed also themselves, right? And if you see homophobic and transphobic attacks, what they basically do is nothing else than they did to them first, right? They gave them up. They denied their humanity. They denied their ambivalence. They denied their femininity. And now there is nothing, and now they want to apply it to you, right? And that's why I would everyone just ask, just try to rethink what is currently happening, because that's they're all like victims of the system.
100%. I think you all spoke on a lot of important things there, and I think what was really apparent to me is like the change as well that has happened, and not particularly because these companies care more, right, but because of the activism that's gone on, and especially within that tech community, that things have changed over the years. And as Alex was saying, you have the option being in tech to actually go to another company. So over the time, we're seeing that these companies, compared to like Victor's experience those years ago, that's becoming, it's still prevalent, but less and less prevalent in today's society, which is good. I'm going to move on to our second poll, which should come off on the screen if all the tech works well. But yeah, do you feel safe bringing your authentic self to your place of work? Everyone, a couple of minutes.
I love that question.
That's an important thing, right?
Yeah.
I think that is nothing more dehumanizing that dress codes in the workplace, that they forbid specific things. I mean, you know, my 2 cents, I find them like, oh no, you have to wear a shirt and a tie and just kind of shoes and so on. It's just like, oh, why you don't print myself, you know, and then save me the bother.
I mean, interestingly, also when you ask people what is authentic self, you're just being me. But who are you? No, really, who are you out of the labels? Out of the labels, gay, non-binary, trans, black, white. Who are you really? And this is a question I'm always challenging, because the people are sometimes so afraid of really asking this question, because they will realize very quickly, okay, oh my God, the only way how I try to express myself is denying myself, right? And I do believe that being your authentic self is standing to your own truth and acknowledging that you have been heard, right? Because the only thing that our society does currently is we are all wounded, right? And what our society does, they shield this wound by pretending what they call freedom. But it's another leash where they basically try to dictate us how we should be. So yeah, a super interesting question, and a lot of things that has to be covered. Yeah.
No, it's good to see that that 71% for bringing your authentic self to work. Unfortunately, we have got that 29% of people who say that they aren't able to or don't feel safe doing so. And I think that is something that is so important, and something that we need to be looking at. And even if you're in a company where potentially, you know, from the corporate side of things, it looks like you're able to be yourself, doesn't mean that you actually do feel comfortable, even if the policies kind of state that you should feel or you do feel. I'm going to move on to a little bit about employee activism and what that looks like. I don't know how many attendees on here know about the Netflix walkout, but that was something that we were really interested in speaking about. So there was for anyone that doesn't know, I'm sure a lot of you do, there was a Netflix comedian that released a show with some pretty transphobic comments. A trans worker from Netflix stood out, I think, online and basically said that they didn't appreciate and didn't stand with the comments, that a worker was ultimately fired, and that led to a lot of trans and LGBT community members walking out of Netflix. We've also seen something similar with Disney recently, so it's definitely on the rise. So just a bit of some facts to throw at you all. Over 80% of companies predict a rise in workforce activism, with 95% expecting an increase in workers' use of social media to amplify their voices. How can organizations, sorry, it's a bit of a double-barreled question here, but one, enable employee activism to empower their employees, and how can organizations govern LGBTQ plus equality? And whoever wants to take it first.
I think I go with a bit of a controversial opinion here. I think like companies, they cannot do anything to support employment activism, because most of the time activism is going to be directed against the company. So they can try to keep it, they can try to give the space of people and create a dialogue between the structure of the company and the people who led the company and the people who is there. Obviously, we can always differentiate, right? It's different when you are doing like a response toward your own company actions, like rainbow washing, sacking people for being different in any words, or denying opportunities, or suppress wages and so on, right? Going outwards, I think, like, again, it ties a lot when we talk at the beginning, right, about being humans, being led by humans, being compassionate and create human, human policies, human resources, and putting at the end of the day as well, the money where your mouth is as a company. Is very easy to say like, oh, this company supports LGBTQ rights and women's right, or whatever it is. But yeah, if it's only like, let's talk about this and let's create a committee that meets every now and then, and the women committee just is assembled for the Women's Day, and the LGBT committee works only for Pride Month, then it's just a bit of like that, like a virtue signaling. I think at the end of the day, supporting the activism that is not direct against the company is only possible by the company getting really involved and being really transparent with these policies, really intentional with them, and do not sign away when they messed up, because that's the other part. When they messed up in activism, it's really easy to just backtrack, just start to retract and never go again, right? And you're never gonna get everything right 100% of the time. I mean, everyone made mistakes. I made mistakes. I sometimes mess pronouns and names of, I try not to. I'm getting really good at it. But the thing is, like, the reactions as well reflects a lot. And with activism is that when it's outwards, is you have to be really truthful about it. But you cannot do anything against, because when you open that door, the activism is going to go both ways. And I think it's a good thing as well, because it keeps company checked and they keep them accountable. Even if it's in the court of public opinion, it's a powerful tool. So I think it's a very, very important.
Alex, would you like to go first? And if sure, do you want me to?
Sure. From the company side, as mentioned before, companies are made of people. So as a result, whatever policies are put in place, whatever the face the company presents to the public, it is coming from those in positions of power. It is coming from those who make those policies, who make those decisions. And as a result, essentially, if you have people that have those decision-making powers that do not support LGBTQ plus people, then, you know, nothing's really gonna change much. Sure, the company can come under pressure, just like Netflix, although in the case of Netflix, it is a lot longer and deeper topic, including the company's rankings and so on and so forth. It is another hour talk in and of itself. But when there is societal external pressure on the company, even those in power who might, you know, think that, oh, gay people shouldn't be able to get married, they might still push through policies that say that the people that are working in our company, we recognize their partner no matter the gender identity, because they know if they wouldn't do that, well, the proverbial guillotine is coming for them. The court of public opinion can sink a company. It can destroy, well, companies. As mentioned, look at Netflix stock prices. So as a result, as discussed before, you can do activism from inside of the company, but calling out companies, other companies that do bad things. Again, Netflix example, but there's like so many examples, so many, too many to count. Calling that out puts pressure on them. And even if you cannot vote with your wallet, you can vote with social media.
Yeah. Just an additional comment on this. I really liked what you said, Victor, and also Alex, is we say in the first sentence, well, in companies there are human beings, but when we say companies are doing mistakes, then we also see again an organization as an abstract form, but there are also human beings who actually do and decide homophobic and transphobic things, right? I just want to put that human thing in the center, and they use the organization in order to promote this homophobic, transphobic thing. So I just want to make it clear that humans are always in center of everything we do. So regardless if we promote diversity or if we are against diversity, equity, inclusion, so human is in the center of everything. And I want to also change a bit the narrative, because I do believe in employee activism, and I do believe that we all have an important role to play, because we are not activists, full-time activists, we are not artists, so we are in organizational form. Why don't we use our privilege? Because with privilege, power, so why don't we have all power, we are working in powerful tech companies. Power means privilege, and with privilege comes responsibility. And when I lead the Pride Network, for example, for Google in Berlin, what I expect is then, okay, well, what do I do with that privileged position? So what I did this year is, for example, say, hey, of course, we cannot go out and say, well, this is our standpoint and this is our needs because of geopolitical situation. But what we can do is we can influence indirectly. So for example, by supporting LGBTQ NGOs, which then do activism. So for example, by supporting them with money, by support, like we do in politics, right? Why don't we then change it and say, okay, well, let's support the local communities by donating money, by inviting NGOs to our offices in Berlin, for example, to host Pride workshops, right? By sharing a truck rather than paying 30,000-40,000 to a marketing agency, and using that money actually to give it to the NGOs and then buy slots on their trucks, so that we say, hey, we don't want to be on a pedestal, we don't want to be on a truck that is like isolated, and we are having our champagne and looking after or looking over all the Pride members. So why don't we change the narratives and say, hey, we want to be part of the Flinter track, we want to be part of the non-binary track because we want to learn. So what you get from us is actually we support you in spaces you need and many you need, because many will accelerate your impact. So this is something where I do strongly believe there are ways how we can support activism. Of course, not as a company itself, because for me a company is just an abstract, it's just an organization form, but the human beings in that company can use that privileged position in order to do something good. And I expect from every Pride lead out there to rethink their Pride initiatives, to rethink where they are spending the money, because for me at the end it goes again, and that's back to the anonymous question there, which I really like, this: how can companies make an impact actually? And again, working more politically. Yes, how we can do that, we should support teamed trucks, not a company truck. So rather saying there is company A and then we're celebrating a truck, why don't we fund trucks based on social identities? So for example, non-binary truck and Flint truck, that's what we do in Berlin. So that's how the money is invested correctly. That's how you can make a political statement without making a clear political statement, right? And using and balancing this company needs versus the needs of the diverse equity inclusion and the needs of the LGBTQ people. Yeah. So there are options. I think we just have to open our eyes for that.
I think that's a really interesting point you've mentioned, especially, and that's the issue. I think I'm not sure if it was Alex or Victor who mentioned it earlier about the how Pride has become so corporate, and now you've got these anti-protests to Pride due to this corporatism. You turn up to a Pride protest and half of them are just like supermarkets from down the street, and often it might be queer people within that, but maybe we should start focusing back on identities rather than these corporate organizations. We've got lots of questions that we've not managed to get through, but I do know we are running behind a bit. But these are questions that we can definitely go through in the networking section afterwards. So I'm just going to lead with the exit, and then we can go ahead and speak with anyone that is interested in speaking, and I'll share the rest of the questions that we didn't get to speak about. But for the allies in the audience, or for the people that aren't in the LGBT community or are but want to be doing more, what is one thing that every person in the audience could do to support inclusion in tech, and to be honest, in general? Anyone?
So I think like for everyone, especially for the allies, because it's really easy to. So I read today a comment in LinkedIn. One of my former colleagues, my Slack, had an unpopular opinion. I was talking about how if you're an ally but you haven't do anything for the community during this year, you might not should attend Pride because it's just a bit of like, and someone in the comments mentioned like, well, I have a ton of gay mates that invite me to Pride. Who you believe you are to bury me for me? And it's like, well, I mean, that's an argument. And Max responded, flipping it like, well, your argument is like, because I have gay friends, I'm allowed to do so. So I'm defining myself an ally, right? So I think it's a wide range of things you can do. Inclusivity. I think the most powerful, the most direct is recognize use of pronouns and language. Use being extremely intentional to share your pronouns, because this fight about gender identities with a little gesture of have your pronouns and share is an invitation, right? Even if you are not a queer person, if you are cis, straight, whatever, but you open with like, hey, my name is John Doe and my pronouns are he, him. That signals, that is directly a sign to the person in front of you that you are there. And as trivial as it seems, you have a massive impact on recognition. It's just like it changes the paradigm of how that relationship is going to work, because you are creating that space where you're saying like, I see you and I recognize you and I like what I see. You know, when you are getting picky about, oh, why I have to use pronouns, it distract from things. It's just like, you know, that's excuses, that's bullshit. That's not being an ally. So I think that's one of the things that I would recommend to everyone.
Yeah, from my side, I would say be loud, talk about things, and vote. Voting with your money, voting with reviews, social media, and of course, voting on elections. Because, you know, even I'm not going to get too political what I think about the current political state, but essentially voting for policies and politicians that support and protect LGBTQ plus people.
I think both of those were, oh, go ahead, Emery, sorry.
So I'm just correctly, the question was, so if there is one thing that we would like to highlight, or what was like the exact?
So if one thing each person in the audience or an ally, specifically an ally, could do to support inclusion within a company or within tech, or just in general, really.
Yeah, so again, I want to also get rid of the word ally. I'm not a big fan of it because ally always mean, okay, it's us and them, but it's our fight. We are all affected by patriarchy, by cis systems, by misogyny, by all the bad system. And allyship always means like it's their fight, it's not my fight. But accomplice, like I'm expecting for someone who's fighting right next to me because I'm also affected. It's someone who we call it like comrade or accomplice. So I do see a lot of conversations about allyship, but I don't like it because it says it's their problem. But we are all affected because we basically saying, hey, all that counts is just be human. Right? And you can be a man and you can be feminine, you can be a woman, you can be masculine, you can be none of these above, because the only thing, the beauty that you will define is the beauty that you define for yourself, right? And this is a deep, deep human need. So when someone is asking me about allyship, I'm just saying, everyone, think beyond. Think how this system has affected you, and think how we can fight that fight together, hand in hand.
I love that. Yeah, there's definitely a conversation to be had surrounding kind of the terminology and the language of things, which is definitely something that we're going to have a conversation about as well. And I think a lot of what you focused on, like Victor, with the pronouns, I think that's so important. Like really trying to hammer home the value to cisgender people. The need for pronouns. If we don't have people within the cisgender community supporting pronoun usage and using pronouns to introduce themselves, it takes away from the value of what it's trying to do in the first place. And again, voting with whatever you can, Alex. I think that's really important as well. So we've got one final poll, and then we're going to go on to our Q&A, and then speaking just a little bit in groups in general about any questions that anyone had. So it should come up here again. If amazing. Do you feel that you have at least, oh, apologies, I'm just getting a phone call. Do you feel that you have at least one action, no matter how small, that you could apply to yourself or your organization to make it more diverse, equitable, or inclusive? And I'll give everyone a minute. And if anyone, I guess, this kind of touches on what we spoke about earlier. Oh. Well, that is amazing. I'm glad to hear it. I really hope that for anyone outside of the community or not at all, but has kind of got some value in this, of what they could be doing in their own companies or just in their general life, really, to be supporting the LGBT community. But yeah, now is the time for our Q&A. I would like to thank our phenomenal panel for sharing your experiences with us. It's been such a great and interesting discussion with some really personal insights. I've learned a lot of things, and it just really reinforces to me why these discussions matter, both personally, looking at an organizational perspective and a societal perspective too. I personally can't see the questions, but I'm hoping that Lucy, who's behind all the technical things, will be able to sort that.
So Natasha, there is one question, like say, I feel that Pride has become a product, and every year it's getting far from manifestation. So it's more about partying and celebration more than a political revolution. It seems that Pride has been abducted by society and normalized, so it's more party within the years. That's so sad. Yeah, and that's absolutely valid comment. So unfortunately, I have to leave because I have an appointment at 8 my time. But I really like that fact because it's so true. They'd rather put us on drag shows, laugh about us, instead of wanting us to educate them. They rather celebrate with a party instead of wanted us to have a demonstration, right? They rather say, oh, look at the gays once a year, like say, and look at the LGBT community once a year and having party and glitter, and then forget us, right? Rather than educating us, because they are afraid, right, of the self-love. They are afraid because what happens if we are able to define our gender by birth? What happens if we define our self-love? What happens? So the system doesn't know how to respond to these, rather than putting us in a template and saying this is the right way to live, right? So I think that's why you see that we are focusing on party, and the politics are supporting more the party than the movement, because movement means change, political action, requests for demonstration. These all are changing the system, and everything what's been changing the system is a threat. So I do believe that's the reason, right? Yeah.
No, that.
Great question. Great question. And normalized also something. I just want to, sorry, that's just a comment. I really hate that word normalized, because it's normal. We are normal. We just don't want to be killed, discriminated. Just want to remind the hate crimes in Oslo that just happened. Just want to remind yesterday it was Pride in Turkey, where my parents come from, and they basically stopped the protests, throwing LGBT rainbows in the trash bin, right? It's normal. We are being hunted and killed. This is something that I want to highlight. And if we change the narrative, like by not calling it pride, by calling it demonstration, but not calling it normalized, by calling it discrimination and hate crime, then we change the narrative, and the people start really to rethink about the way how we have been treated, just because for whom we are. Yeah.
I love that, Marian. Thank you so much for being a part of this today. We really appreciate it. Yeah, sounds like you're very, very busy. So enjoy your next meeting. But it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. And yeah, hopefully we shall speak to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Natasha, Victor, Alex, thank you also so much for the great question. I really adore every individual who's fighting for equity, and I really adore all the open questions, because it's a way how we can learn from each other. So thank you so much for everyone taking 1 hour of your time and being here with us and discussing those important topics. It means also for me a lot. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you
very much
so
for coming to
much.
Bye.
Bye. I'd actually like to answer this question as well, to be honest, as it's slightly less tech oriented and just more pride oriented. I definitely agree with a lot that's being said here, and that it has become more about a celebration than a political revolution, which it is, because let's be honest, especially when we're looking at LGBT rights in general, I think it's really important to remember that it is transgender rights that are being the most gone against at the moment. They're the ones that are being retracted. That's where the issue lies, and that's where you see. So I was at Dublin Pride this weekend. I was part of the march. It was great, with the transgender organisation over in Ireland. And we did see a lot of kind of those counter-revolutionary protests happening, which is definitely happening, and it's like bringing it back to the community and bringing it back to being part of less of corporate celebration and more of a protest against what's going on in the world, and that's definitely something that a lot of people are getting involved in these days. I do want to say, on the other hand, I don't think it's always that bad that Pride has to be a celebration. Potentially, if you're an ally, not so much. If you're a member of the queer community and you are in the community, it is okay for us to have kind of one day where we actually celebrate who we are, where we enjoy who we are. Pride is a protest, 100%, completely agree with that to the day I die. But we also should be able to celebrate ourselves in a world where potentially not everyone sees us that way and supports us that way. And a lot of queer people growing up haven't been taught the kind of self-love that Pride gives you. So I think it's very important to see that although we do have the political side and it will always be the fight first, we should also have a night where we can let our hair down and just appreciate ourselves being queer and enjoy that.
I agree with that. It can be both things. It can be like a way of protest and manifest, but also can be a celebration. Just like I dislike how rainbow washing works and the voices in the community saying like, oh, it's not that bad, it creates visibility. It's like, no, it is bad. It is bad. They should not have that right to just put a rainbow and make everything right when they are like discriminating. So
Completely agree. Alex, do you have any thoughts on the question?
Not much actually to add. I was looking at a different question in Q&A about a certificate about a workplace being safe for the LGBTQ community. However, there is no such thing in UK. And as far as I'm aware, it is not even available in a couple of other countries. So, question, what could we do to make it better? We can make a certificate, make it really stringent, make sure that whatever company gets it is actually a good place to work at. That could be one thing to do, but it requires a certain kind of person to organize all of that. Mm-hmm. Not it, Victor?
I think like, the certification is as good as the people behind it, controlling, as you say, strict control of that. It's just like, I cannot see that happening in the UK. I mean, with the political climate, not even if Labour win. I mean, they are like exactly in the same boat. So I think it's a very good thing that Germany is providing someone in Germany, because I believe Pride Champion is an NGO in Germany and it's governmentally backed up. I'm not really sure. I was just like doing a quick check because I never heard, but I don't think it's only doable and useful as long as whatever it's the criteria is an ongoing thing, because you can do a certification, get the checks once a year, and then you are doing exactly the same thing. You are rainbow washing yourself, right? It's just like, what implies, what is the certification guaranteed? I think it's a lot of unpack in that conversation as well, like how far standardize and regulate these things will help.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree there, and I think on the topic of rainbow washing, which is something that I wanted to bring up earlier, and I don't think we have any other Q&A, so I would love to bring it up because I think it's a really, really important aspect, and it comes up. We talk about every Pride, and then unfortunately we get to Pride every single year, and it happens again. We all know, and well, I'm hoping everyone here knows a little bit about what rainbow washing is. If people don't know, it's just when, as Alex was saying earlier, you're putting the rainbow, you're putting a rainbow emoji or a flag on your LinkedIn during Pride, or you're saying all these great things about Pride during June, and then for the rest of it, we're forgotten about. And often this is done because unfortunately, we're quite a large community, and we have money. and organizations do this in order to basically get our money, because research has shown as queer people we're more likely to go to organizations that have you know, LGBTQ imagery in their advertisements, things like that, because obviously we go with what we know, right? And that's just a small aspect of what rainbow washing is, but to give a bit of an insight in terms of rainbow washing, from you both of your perspectives. One, how can you tell if someone is rainbow washing, and how can, I don't want to say organizations again because of these entities, but how can we move away from rainbow washing? What do you see the future to be here to kind of get away from this constant repetitivism of rainbow washing that we're unfortunately seeing at the moment?
Check what the company does rest of the year. If
Yeah.
it's just June or around June of like, here's our, you know, trans employees doing a talk about how lovely it is to work for this company. Here's our rainbow logo. Oh, we have a float in the parades. If it's at June, around June, well, it's rainbow washing. It's time limited offer. You know, like, come everyone, just now, 50% off rainbows.
Come see the
But,
gays.
yeah.
Come see the gays in our company.
Exactly.
Let us highlight them now. I think like the future, it has to be where this is not needed. I mean, where companies live equality and inclusion all year round. I deeply been disgusted by rainbow washing by many companies that they don't care. And then when called out, they're like, "Oh, but we do so many things internally." It's like, yeah, you know, it's like, it's like a lot of things. Like when no one can see you, right? Where it's just like it's very convenient. I believe rainbow washing is like it should be considered a very bad, business practice. The same way that banks and corporations buy the sponsor of Pride, just like to wash their image. It's just not right. It does not sit right with me. It does not create more representation because there is no representation on it. Someone was arguing not long ago on a LinkedIn post, like having seen the flags when they were a kid in the 80s will have give the representation. That's not true, because what representation and what role model you can get from a company that cares once a month. I mean, it's a money argument that I've been using a lot lately because I've been talking about a lot of this, but I think the future is like where people can see beyond that. And I believe that the only way to do that is like, look at the company, but don't look at the workforce. Look at the leadership, how diverse they are. How many queer people are you seeing? I mean, and I know that it's I'm very stereotypical male. I'm a cis white male in a leadership position. But I mean, I really truly believe that the diversity and inclusion, a lot of companies, they apply it from leadership down and they keep the privilege and the power for themselves. And that's a very reflective one. So you see a rainbow, check the board of directors, check the C levels, and then judge by yourself. And that's everything I have to say. And sorry, I have to go. I have like as well a hard stop in a minute. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming to listen to us. Thank you very much, Natasha and Lucy, for organizing this and give us the opportunity. These are super important topic. I think we should do this all year round, not only in June. These conversations are so valuable and bring more people and more representation to it. So thank you very much. Alex, I guess we'll talk soon. So enjoy the rest of your day and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Victor.
Bye-bye.
Really appreciate you being there. Yeah, for anyone else that's left over, we do have a networking room which we can wrap up to. But yeah, thanks for everyone for coming again, listening to our voices. This is something that is part of my my role. I want to be doing this more all year round, but it was a great way to kick off and kind of end Pride, really. But yeah, I'll let it move to the networking room for anyone who wants to get involved and speak about anything that we've talked about already.